guys, and welcome back to Opal&Mint. I am Ashley, and today's video is a big one. I have been wanting to do this for a little bit now, and it seemed a little overwhelming, daunting, and possibly caused some sparks in the comments section. But I wanted to put Daniel Smith and Holbein head to head. Before we get into this and the breakdown and all of the painting and everything, I want a disclaimer, big disclaimer here. Paint preferences and paint types and textures and what you like is all very, very personal, very subjective. So anything that I say in this video is my take on the paints themselves and what I personally like. I am going to try to point out the characteristics of the paints so that you can better identify if it is a paint for you or not. There are some things like the creaminess and the pigmentation and stuff that I can speak to that might help you without it being a personal opinion. But I am giving some personal opinions in this, so let's go ahead and dive in. Daniel Smith versus Holbein. First of all, Daniel Smith has been my go-to professional brand since I started painting. I have used it a lot. So I have a lot more experience with Daniel Smith and how it works. So Holbein is a newer introduction to me, so I am much more familiar with Daniel Smith. So take all of this with a grain of salt as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I chose Daniel Smith when I first started investing in professional paints. I started watercoloring in 2020, and I started with, I think my very first palette was a Winsor Newton Cotman pocket palette, a great starter palette if you're just getting into watercolor. But then I got some Shinhan. They were advertised as professional paints, and I was like, I can afford this, let's do this. And I got the Shinhans, and I used those for quite a while. And as I started getting into watercolor and watching videos, Daniel Smith kept coming up. It kept exciting me. It kept grabbing my attention, and there's a few reasons why. One is completely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that it got my attention because of this. But hey, we all have our reasons, right? So the first reason the Daniel Smith brand caught my attention is my husband's name is Daniel. There it is. So I gravitated toward Daniel Smith because of Daniel, my husband. That was reason one. That's not the only reason, not just because of the name, but the characteristics of the paint. First of all, Daniel Smith has a bunch of beautiful granulating colors. A lot of them are not the two color separating, which we're going to get into Holbein's new ones, but they are granulating. They have texture. They add something special to the painting. And on top of that, all of the colors are so beautiful. The color range and the amount of granulating colors that Daniel Smith has is impressive. And every time I would see them swatched, I would want more. And every time I go in the store, I'm like, oh, I just want to try another one and try another one. So Daniel Smith, for whatever reason, captured my attention. It captured my heart, and I invested in Daniel Smith paints. This palette is a 52 pan palette, and I use these. I use these a lot. Obviously, there are some I use more than others. There are some that are more specialty that I only use on certain special occasions, but I have refilled some of these pans multiple times, and this is the one I go to when I am painting professional painting. So when I get a commission to paint a pet portrait or a house or whatever it is, I always use my Daniel Smith. I know they're gonna last. They're light fast, except for the Opera Pink. Opera Pink there's a couple that might be a little bit less, but Opera Pink is the only fugitive one, I believe, in my palette. I absolutely love Daniel Smith. I love how they blend. I love the transparency. I can build up. I can do light washes. They behave in a manner that I like. So that's my little spiel on Daniel Smith and why I picked Daniel Smith to begin with. For some reason, Winsor Newton did not capture me at all. For some reason, had no interest in Winsor Newton. I think the majority of theirs are a smoother paint and don't granulate. Please correct me if I am wrong, because if Winsor Newton has some granulating colors, I totally would be down to try some. But I don't really need another professional brand. Back to Holbein now. So when I first got my professional paints, I picked Daniel Smith. The only ones I knew about then were Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton. And then there was also like Schmincke. There's a couple of other ones that I'd heard of, but not heard a lot of. I had never heard of Holbein when I first got into professional paints. I discovered Holbein when I went to Jerry's Artorama. I saw there was a display, and for some reason in my mind, I thought Holbein was a cheaper, not as good, not as high quality brand. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the tube, the package looked more simple, or I'm not really sure what it was, but in store, I, for some reason, had the impression it was kind of like the Turner's watercolor at Jerry's. I'm not saying Turner's is bad either, but they are a little bit cheaper. I do have one Turner's paint. It did crack. But anyways, have no experience with that brand. But for some reason, I thought that these were just, you know, not at the same caliber, not the same quality, but boy was I wrong. So I bought, the very first Holbein paint I bought was Shell Pink. It just, for some reason, I just wanted that color. So I got Shell Pink. It's beautiful, it's creamy, it's very pigmented. And then the second color I got was Davies Gray. Davies Gray, if you don't know, is so beautiful. Well, I guess I could show you my Holbein. So here's my Holbein palette. My husband 3D printed this palette. I just drew on top of it with acrylic markers. But anyways, this is my Holbein palette. And then my Holbein granulators. So these are the just watercolors, and these are the new granulators that came out. I do have one gouache in here. The white is a Holbein gouache. I have been interested in Holbein. I had a couple of colors. I used them a little bit, but they weren't in a palette that I used all the time. So my husband actually ended up buying me the 48 tube set or something of 5mm tubes. I have a swatching video swatching all of those out, and I was so shocked and surprised. They're beautiful, they're creamy, they're richly pigmented. A lot of these are actually really opaque, but they do sheer out to be transparent, have nice pretty washes as well. So, by the way, this one right here is Shell Pink. So pretty. If you want to see them swatched out, I'll link the Holbein video below. So that was my introduction to Holbein. Knew a little bit about it, swatched them, but still didn't like play with them intensely until I got the granulating colors, because again, that's why Daniel Smith captured my heart. I love granulating colors. They just add so much personality into paintings for me. I saw the granulating colors from Holbein launch in Japan last year. Couldn't get them. They weren't available in the US. Every month I would look at the site, I would look at their Instagram, like, when are they coming? Finally got my hands on those Holbein granulating colors, and they did not disappoint me whatsoever. They're so beautiful. I have had so much fun playing with these. It made me rethink Holbein and visit the Holbein paints that I already had. Poured this palette and I started using it along with the granulating colors, and I fall in love with Holbein. Now the question is, for the video, I know this was like a big long opening, the question is Holbein or Daniel Smith for me. This is a tough question, because for me, and I've done a lot of painting, a lot of testing. I'm going to show you all of the things because I have done a lot of side-by-side swatches, a lot of paintings that I did the same painting with both brands, and they both perform professionally. They both perform beautifully, but they do have different characteristics. So it really depends on what you're looking for in your paints. For me, I like them both, and I'm going to use them both. And I will also probably use them for different things and different styles of painting. Let's go ahead and look at all of the swatches and the paintings that I've done with these so you can see them side by side before I dig any more into the characteristics of the paint. So the first thing that I did was I painted these two paintings side by side. I'm going to put footage in here so you can see them closer. I painted these, I tried to use the exact same colors, and I painted them, and then I had people come over and look at them and pick which paint they preferred. So looking at the blends between the colors, looking at the pigmentation, everything, I wanted them to look at it and cast their vote. So they would cast their vote on the back. I'm curious, let me know in the comments below before I tell you which is which. Which one do you think is Daniel Smith and which one do you think is Holbein? It was very interesting because my husband had some friends over and they were all commenting back and forth, trying to determine which paint was better. It was a fascinating conversation, especially coming from non-artists. They were analyzing it, and it was, I really wish I had recorded that conversation because it was very funny. But the score ended up being 4-5. 4 votes for Daniel Smith and 5 for Holbein. I did not vote. I will vote at the end of the video, and it will be either a tie or one will win. We will see. I still don't know which one my vote is. We'll see. At the end of this video, we'll find out. Okay, so after that, I decided I wanted to just swatch the colors and see how they blend, how they are at mass tone, how they are at their softest, and see if I can see any discernible differences. So I'm going to put these on the screen side by side so you can kind of study them. I'll put the name of which one is which so you can see. Differences, these are the same colors for the most part. We've got Payne's Gray, we have Lavender, we have Cadmium Yellow. One of them is medium and one of them is light, but they look the same to me. They're very, very similar. And then we have Quinacridone Rose and we have Rose Magenta, or Magenta. Yeah, they're very, very similar, but a little slightly different hue. We have Ultramarine from both. The Holbein Ultramarine is actually more granulating than the Daniel Smith one. And the Daniel Smith is actually the French Ultramarine. I do have Ultramarine as well. I should probably swatch that. But French Ultramarine is usually more granulating. Holbein's Ultramarine Deep is what this is more granulating, and it is stunning. Sap green and olive green for the greens. But in looking at this test, we're gonna look over at the side where you see just the darkest. They perform quite similarly. They do go to about the same mass tone. Holbein has just a little bit more vibrancy and a little bit more saturation in that color. I think the Holbeins have just a little bit more pigmentation to them, just a little bit. But that's where they shine, where Daniel Smith shines. The Daniel Smith paints have the nicest, softest blend. So I did the same thing again, but whoops, I got stuff everywhere. But a little bit bigger, and I can tell just like glancing at this right here is Holbein, because look how intensely pigmented that is. So rich. And then these are Daniel Smith. I feel like the Daniel Smiths have just a little bit softer of a blend. They just naturally blend out just a little bit better. It really depends on if you're wanting a vibrant, punchy, pigmented, little bit more opaque color, or if you're wanting something that can layer up. It's a little bit more translucent, and again, it's not every single color. This is just a generalized for the colors that I've swatched, and a very, very smooth blend on the Daniel Smith. The Holbeins are not a bad blend. This one, I decided to paint the flowers side by side, and this one makes it a little bit harder to tell which one is which. They are both very beautiful, very smooth. The greens are slightly different color of green, but Daniel Smith is on the left and Holbein is on the right. You know, they look a lot alike. But one thing I have noticed, and actually my husband noted on, where's the little yellow flowers of this painting, and I actually just noticed it on this as well. I'm not sure why this is. If you know, let me know in the comments. But on the Holbein painting, around the yellow, the paint has a little darker rim around it instead of just being one solid faded color, which he liked about it because it added more detail to the painting. But you can really see that in this one. So the Holbein, if you look closely at it, you can see how there is like a rim around the paint, and then the Daniel Smith, it just kind of is soft to the edge. So I'm not positive why that is or what causes that, but that is something to note. The Holbein, a lot of cases, does have a slight rim around it. It's interesting. Not all of it, not all of it, and not all colors. Is this yeah, even the pink, I can see it here now. It is pretty much all of them. Interesting. You have to really, really look. So it's not like a big deal, but the Holbein, you can see a slight darker rim around paint. Interesting. Okay, so there's that. I wanted to test the layerability of the two paints. So I did this, and honestly, they both performed really well. I didn't really see much of a difference between the two as far as their layering abilities. They both got to a pretty good mass tone. They got really dark. The Daniel Smith actually got really dark in the ultramarine in this test, so they both performed beautifully. And then I did a tiny little fade down here because I wanted to see the difference in the blendability and that fade. So there is a little bit of a difference. I think the Daniel Smith, again, blends just a tiny, tiny bit smoother and more gradual than the Holbein. But again, all of this is the amount of water, the amount of paint. Like, it's really hard to scientifically do this. So I did several tests so we can kind of get an overview of what we got here. So I decided today to paint just a little flower in granulating colors. So I picked some from Holbein and some from Daniel Smith. They're not the same colors. I wanted to see which granulating paints I preferred. Guys, it's hard. I like them both. But I find the Holbein granulators have more, most of them have two color separation, which I don't know why, it just tickles my fancy. Like, I just love having those two colors separate. And so they're more visually appealing to me. I love the Holbein granulating colors. All right, a couple more tests. I made some donuts. They're not the greatest paintings in the world, but here are my donuts. Sounds weird. I had problems with the Holbein donut, and it could have just been a frustrating painting time, but here's the Daniel Smith donut. I just used wisteria for the icing. The Daniel Smith ones, I definitely noticed in this test, are more transparent. This one ended up getting really kind of wonky, but it's fine. I was mixing two colors together. I wasn't just using the one color for the icing. So this one had a lot more uncontrollable and blooming happening throughout. It was a little bit harder to get a consistent wash. And I think I layered more on this one than the other one. So that might be part of the problem. But the sprinkles stand out more on this one because the paints are a little bit more opaque. So I did notice I had a little bit easier time using the Daniel Smith paints in this particular painting. But I don't know that it's the fault of the paint or if it was just me having a hard time. And then the last test I just did, I wanted to do a granulating background, again, comparing the two granulating colors. And then I just used a black from both brands to paint a little flower on top. Can you tell which brand is which? The Holbein has two color separation in the blue background, and the Daniel Smith is just one color, but separates beautifully. I like them both. It's so hard. I am the type of painter who likes to use different brands. I like using different paints for different types of projects too. So if I was painting a pet portrait, I would not use my Holbein paints. I would 100% use my Daniel Smith paints. And even a house portrait, there are a couple of reasons. Again, I know they're reliable. I have tested them for years now. But two, I have a lot of texture granulating paints in the neutral tones. So my blacks, my hematite genuine, my browns, my piemontite. I have lots of texture that I can use for in the fur, in the nose, in all of that. It makes getting texture in paintings a little bit simpler without having to paint each individual stroke. I like using these. So Daniel Smith wins in that aspect, but Holbein is coming in hot. Holbein is trying so hard to beat out Daniel Smith in my book. So I can't say one is better than the other. I just can't do it. Because the Holbein granulatings are so beautiful. One thing I will note about Holbein, they are creamy, they feel creamy. It's a texture sensation under the brush like that I can't explain. They are so creamy. I've heard people not like that, so if you don't like a really creamy paint, but I personally like the feel of it. I feel like I really need to try some Holbein gouaches now. I have the white, but I feel like I need more. But yeah, they're just so creamy and beautiful. All right, so which one gets my vote? I'm going to base my vote on the first painting I did. Okay, let me look. Which one do I like better? If I'm looking at these only, I would vote for Holbein. But if I take into account everything and all of the testing and all of the painting that I do, I think Daniel Smith is still my go-to. I can't give up either one of them. But I don't know. Oh, this is hard. Can I call it a tie? They're my two top brands. I think that's what I'm going to do. It's a tie. Oh, I want to know in the comments, have you used both brands? Do you like one better than the other? Or like me, do you like one for certain things better and the other one for other paintings? Like, I like them for different reasons. But my original assumption and assessment of Holbein based on seeing them in store, that they were cheaper and not as good, is completely wrong. They are right up there with Daniel Smith in my book. They are high quality. They are beautiful. They are creamy. They are pigmented. And I'm excited to paint with them some more. So if you want to see me use Holbein in more videos, let me know in the comments. I have so many paints to use, but I think these two brands are the ones I'm going to continue to go back to over and over. And if I didn't have a YouTube channel and I didn't test out paints all the time, I think I would be happy just having these two brands. I honestly think that's the case. Especially since Holbein has granulating colors now, I'm set. All right, guys, I think that is going to wrap up this video. Leave all the comments down below. Please be nice to each other. I know that people get very defensive about their brands. For some reason, they take it personal if you say something about their favorite that they don't like. So just keep that in mind. Please be respectful and nice in the comments. But that is it for this one. If you did enjoy this, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already and you want to see our future videos, hit that subscribe button down below, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. We're advertised at the... know what that is, but what are you? Cadmium.